Today's topic is the ugly side of gardening. I'm sure you're all very familiar with those beautiful pictures and videos on Instagram, blog posts, all over the web. It's inundated with it. But that's not reality. This is reality. As you can see, I'm standing in an area that is full of weeds, has a lot of pruning that needs to go on, and there's a few little bugs and disease issues that we need to address. And that's what we're going to cover in today's video so that your ugly side of gardening can be less so. If you want to learn more about gardening and a plant-based lifestyle, click subscribe now. So we're going to start off with problem number one, which is weeds. Now weeds, by their definition, are vigorously growing plants, and they're going to plant themselves in odd places and sprout out regardless of what you do. So as long as you understand that, it's not so frustrating. But if you leave an area unattended, as I did here, chaos will take over. As you can see, we have a lot of weeds right here amongst some non-weeds. And we want to make sure that we remove the weeds so that way our non-weeds can flourish. Part of the reason why we want to do this is that weeds not only are going to sap away the nutrients and moisture from the soil from the plants you intend to grow, but they can also encourage disease and pests to attack your desired plants. One of the most common ways of dealing with weeds is by simply hand pulling. Okay, so the key for hand digging is you want to make sure that you remove the roots. That is your primary target. If you get all the roots out, then you won't get a repeat offender. So this particular weed here, I believe is nutsedge, but don't quote me on that. But if it is, that means underground here, there is going to be a little nodule. And so I want to make sure I get that nodule along with the roots. So the way I've done this is that I've cleared the area around the base of the plant here, and I might scoot some of the dirt around so I can actually get my hands on the very base that's just under the ground. And then I'm going to pinch, wiggle a little bit to loosen the soil, and pull. And as you can see, I got a nice bunch of roots, and right there is the nodule. So yay! I have completed my task of weed number one. Another way to deal with weeds is simply by mulching. As you can see here, this lovely patch has no weeds. This isn't something that I've done recently. This has been a couple months worth of just mulching the area well. But if you look beyond it, what do we see? A big bunch of weeds. And that was because that was just empty dirt and nothing was placed there, and all the weeds took control and grew over. Another method of controlling weeds is by crowding. Now this is the same area that I was sitting in earlier, just in a different viewpoint. And as you can see, these long stems that are coming up from the base, that is a bunch of okra. And because they are so closely planted together, they are creating a canopy that's making the area underneath them unsuitable for weed growth. And that's why this particular area is more crowded with plants I want and less crowded with plants I don't want. Another method of weed control is the no-dig method. And this is a particular style of gardening where you don't use one of these. Instead, you're going to minimize your impact on the earth, creating an environment of the soil that retains its nutrients and its connection to other plants. And this has a different structure of soil, and that retains the unique properties of the soil undisturbed. So that way it has a less hospitable environment for weeds, and you can focus all your energy on the plants you want. Solarizing is another technique for weed control, and it's best used in an area like this, which is our raised garden bed. And what you need is an area that you intend to garden that you aren't currently gardening at the moment, because you will need at least 4 to 6 weeks of time that area can remain fallow. How to solarize an area is very simple. You just need a plastic sheet and something to hold it down, like bricks or large stones. You're going to cover your area that you want to solarize with the plastic sheet and then hold it down with the weights and leave it as is for 4 to 6 weeks. What this does is it heats the earth just beneath the plastic sheet, killing off any seeds that may be remaining there from weeds. So once you add your new plant growth after the solarizing time is over, only those will take root and no weeds will be introduced into that section. Unless you have a bunch of birds, like obviously we do in this area, and they will plant weeds for you regardless of the situation. Another method of weed control, which is often overlooked, is to minimize fertilization and watering. You want to make sure that you fertilize and water the plants you intend to grow rather than overspreading that nurturing of the soil. Because if you fertilize and water areas where you don't have plants growing, then that may encourage unwanted plants to grow there. So keep that in mind when you set up your fertilizing and watering schedule. There are some old school ways of dealing with weeds that are slightly more violent, and this includes boiling water and one of my favorites, vodka. Basically what you're doing is you're introducing an inhospitable environment directly to the weed, killing the weed. Vodka, a neutral spirit, or rubbing alcohol is going to dry out the plant, thus killing it. Boiling water is a similar aspect, as it's going to immediately change the temperature very drastically in that area. But because you're pinpointing right on the root of the weed, once that water eases out into the rest of the landscape, it will quickly cool off, thus minimizing any damage to plants that you want to keep. Another method of weed control that I am new to and haven't actually used myself, but I'm highly intrigued, is the use of corn gluten. Now, the concept of adding corn gluten to your garden area is that it's going to inhibit any germination of seeds. So once the seeds have germinated, corn gluten doesn't affect them at all, but any seeds that are in the ground that have yet to germinate won't do so because of the addition of corn gluten. It is a fine grain powder that is the after product of the corn industry, so you can get it rather easily. And if you have a mature plant that you want to keep, but you want to make sure that no weed seeds sprout, sprinkling some corn gluten around your plants might be a good method. So I intended on covering all these topics in one video, but as you can tell, I have a lot to say. So this is now going to be a series of videos on the topic of ugly side of gardening. Thank you to all these people who help keep the channel going. And look up, there's another video that if you like this one, you might like that one equally as well.